We talked about independence, and Brady, you had said earlier that, which is true, there's more independent voters now than there are Democrats or Republicans or people that call themselves independent. So how are the candidates going to have to go after this independent vote?
I think one of the most interesting points about reaching out to the independents is how health care is going to play, presuming Romney's the nominee. So right now on the right, there's a lot of conversation that this is a huge liability for Romney, that Santorum is hammering him on his great weakness, that he'll be unable to differentiate himself from the president on health care. It's unclear to me that this is a problem in the general election. In fact, it is potentially an asset with picking up the independent vote, because you could say that on the individual mandate issue, worst case scenario for Romney, it's a wash with independents, right? You guys were both for an individual mandate, one at the national level, Romney at the state level. And so while that is widely unpopular among all voters and especially among independents, if they're mano a mano on that in agreement, I don't think that's a negative for Romney. And then if Romney can point to the other parts of the Massachusetts health care bill and say, look at these similarities. I'm for providing health insurance for people who need it. I supported a bill in Massachusetts that said that you can't discriminate based on pre-existing conditions, one of the aspects of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act that is very popular. He may actually be able to turn what has been a supposed liability in the primary among the conservative Republican primary electorate into an asset as he's trying to pick up these independent voters that Professor Brady is talking about.
Tammy's exactly right on that point, and that's exactly why Mitt Romney has trouble in the Republican Party. Because when she's saying, oh, it'd be a trade-off in this and they like this, the Republican voter out there is saying, yeah, why wouldn't they like it? Because their kids get to stay on the thing and they pretend it doesn't cost anything, but it does. So Romney, they don't trust Romney on these sets of issues. So she's exactly right. In the general election, that wouldn't hurt him. It'd probably be a help, but because you couldn't choose on that.
Right.
But in this primary, I think they think, is there a deep down? Or is he a guy who will just say whatever he needs to say to be president? And that seems to me to be the crucial variable with him.
Right.
It's not over.
Once he gets to the general election, there's the concern that there'll be an enthusiasm deficit and some people on the right won't show up. My gut is that would be overwhelmed by any benefit that would provide him among the swing voters. So he's just got to get through and then focus on what his strengths are.
I think his appeal among swing voters is precisely his deficit among the bigs. They're afraid the guy isn't really a conservative. He's not an ideologue, and we don't trust him. And swing voters say, good. They like the idea he's going to cut deals.
But he can't say that.
No.
Gee, I'm going to cut deals with those guys. No, that's not going to work.
Well, let's look at the other side of the table. If you were advising President Obama, what issues would you tell him to really get some wins on, to really hone on, to make sure he wins the re-election?
Pray for the euro. That's what I would say, baby. Pray for the euro. Because I think the economy grew at a reasonable level last year, and if it grows at sort of the projected, I've been looking at various projections, it grows at about 2.5%. So the mathematical models we have of the election look at the economy and retrospective voting, which simply means this, that voters say, well, how did the president do or how did his party do in regard to the economy, and that's the major factor in their vote. The models now show the election really too close to call if that's the growth rate. And people say, oh, well, you know, if the rate has if the unemployment rate's above 8, no president's ever won. They always, except for Franklin Roosevelt, where it was 14% in 1936. So I think the thing's the economy, and it's growing well enough. I think the Republican candidate has to be somebody that can convince the independents that he is the person that'll get the economy to grow. So Obama's got to worry about the economy, and the main thing that I think could drag it down is Europe. Greece, they can't cut a deal.
Trying to avoid surprising events, what we call exogenous shocks, like if the Israelis take out the Iranian bomb, you know, it's sort of hard to say how that'll cut. And don't kill all the terrorists too quickly. Save a few for late October. You know, kill them then.
It's interesting that Romney doesn't have any foreign policy experience, so you wonder if things go poorly foreign policy-wise for Obama. It certainly wouldn't help him, but it's not like he has potentially have a general election opponent who could say, well, this is how I would have handled it based on past experience.
Yeah, I've heard some stories that meant Romney would have to whoever it is on the Republican side would really have to worry about who they make the vice president for exactly the point that you just mentioned. It's got to be somebody that has foreign policy experience.
Well, since we're here, and not that we want to get into the minutia, but who would be your vice president pick for, suppose it was a Mitt Romney ticket?
Well, I wouldn't pick it for him, but the name I've heard before is Condi Rice, our colleague Condi Rice, of course, because she's certainly got that experience. I haven't asked her about whether she'd do it, but that's a name you hear more than any other.
If you want to ensure on the foreign policy side, I think Condi is your choice. If you're focused on domestic politics, my guess would be Mark Rubio, that he potentially delivers Florida, and he also comes through with the Hispanic vote.
Even though he said he wouldn't run? You mean you don't believe him when he said that?
You think Dr. Rice is going to run?
Yeah. No. I mean, look, Condi's not a politician in that sense, but Rubio's saying, oh, I don't want to be vice. I don't pay attention to that. When the nominee calls you and says...
I hate to predict.
Smart move.
We're better at post-dicting.
There you go.